there. I'm Amy.Connell. Welcome to Graced Health, the podcast for women who want simple and grace-filled ways to take care of themselves and enjoy a little chocolate. I'm a certified personal trainer and nutrition coach who wants you to know your eating, movement, and body don't have to be perfect. You just need to be able to do what you're called to do. 2022 has offered two milestones to the Graced Health podcast. In January, we celebrated 200 episodes where I handed my mic over to my friend Laura and she interviewed me. There were a lot of great questions and a lot of laughter. And then today we are celebrating 3 years of podcasting. I can't decide if 3 years seems like a long time or just a blink. But what I can tell you is I am so lucky to get to have conversations across the country and across continents, and am grateful for each and every one. And I mean that so sincerely. About 6 months ago, I attended a leadership retreat and took the Clifton Strength Finder assessment. Now, I don't know about you, but I love taking assessments because they offer just little clues into what makes me tick, why I think the way I do, why I act the way I do. And in case you're wondering, I'm an Enneagram 9, which means I'm a people pleaser. I am a DS with an emphasis on the D in the DISC assessment. So that means, according to the DISC assessment, that I enjoy accomplishing the end goal and want to accomplish it without alienating people. If you know me, you know that is spot on. The other thing that it says is I may struggle between accomplishing the task and keeping people on board, and the trade-off is often difficult for me. Anyway, that Clifton Strength Finder really helped me understand why I love podcasting so much. Connection is one of my top 5 strengths. So the way the Clifton Strength Finder is it lists, you have 36 strengths and it will give you like your top 5 and then a top 10. And that really encourages you to lean into your top ones and then find help or find a partner in the ones that are down on the bottom. So rather than trying to raise up all of them, it's like, no, lean into your top ones, and then find someone who's one of maybe your bottom ones is a top one. And then everybody contributes, everyone gets stronger, and the outcome is even greater. While I don't really consider myself an extrovert, I don't know if I'm an introvert. I'm somewhere kind of in between. I think that's called an ambivert. But I come away from every single interview I do here on the Graced Health podcast energized just because of the connection. And the bonus on all of this is we get to just cut through the fluff, the small stuff, and just have genuine, interesting conversations about whatever the topic is. So I truly do consider it a privilege to get to speak to so many experts. And most of them have a lot more letters after my name. I have like CPT and CNC, and that's it. I understand too that this is something that not everybody is able to do, even if they want to. And I don't take that privilege lightly. I am highly selective about who comes on as a guest to my show. And if you are new and you haven't yet listened to the statement of values, I really recommend that as a starting point, just to kind of get a feel for what this show is about and what is valuable to me and this show. Now, the downside to being the recipient of all of this information is I can pretty easily come across as a know-it-all. And I'm not. But because I've been accumulating all of this different information over the past 3 years, I have a lot stored up because it's all fascinating to me. And then, of course, that can kind of come out in conversations. And sometimes I just have to shut my mouth because it just gets to be a little bit too much. As I was thinking about how I wanted to celebrate this 3-year milestone, I realized how many just small, simple changes I have made in my life over the last 3 years, thanks to these experts. So in this episode, I'm bundling many of these up for you all here in one place in this episode. Now, not all of them may be applicable to you, but if you're new to the show and you want to know what kind of content you're going to receive here, this is a great place to just get your feet wet, get a feel for what kind of conversations we have on this show. And by the way, I'm going to run through a lot of different episodes and reference them. I will put these all in the show notes. So if you are watching this on YouTube, if you are listening to this in whatever podcast player you are using, you can absolutely just go click on the show notes. It will take you to my website, which will have links to everything. So I'm trying to make this really simple for you if you want to go back and listen to the full episodes, which I highly recommend. Maybe not all of them, because that would just be, first of all, you'd get really tired of me and it's just a lot of episodes. But the ones that you're like, ooh, now that sounds really interesting, go check it out, go listen to it and see if that is something, see if you might be able to pull something different or additional than I did on these episodes. I like to say this podcast has grace-filled conversations about our physical, mental, and spiritual health. So that is how I have organized this today. And I hope it goes without saying that there are certainly more lessons than those I have mentioned here. I just had to cut it off because otherwise I felt like I would just be referencing the entire back catalog. And you don't want me to do that. You can go listen to the whole back catalog if you want. Again, it would take some time because I think we are up to about 240-ish episodes by now. So you don't want to do that. And I don't want to give you all of that. Okay, let's dig in. So let's talk about our physical health. Now, if you know me, you know that this is my wheelhouse. I'm a personal trainer. I'm a nutrition coach, a nutrition geek who gets it right about 30% of the time. The trainer and the fitness aspect, I get a little bit more of, but I love learning all of the different aspects about how our body can work together. So let me share with you some of the changes that I have made over the past 3 years, thanks to these amazing podcast guests. Now, the first one is actually admittedly a little muddy. This is not a specific change. The podcast entitled How Intuitive Eating Can Give You the Grace and Freedom You Need with Erin Todd. Erin is one of the hosts of the Intuitive Eating for Christian Women podcast. And I have learned so much from her. And I have been really enjoying partnering with her over on her show with a book club for my book, Your Worthy Body, and some other things. So it seems like this is a really good place to start, but it's also just not totally cut and dry. I am trying to figure out how to apply more intuitive eating into my overall existence, really. As I shared on the My Story episode, most of my young and early adulthood was really bound by rules of diet culture and just overall poor body image. And for the most part, I've walked away from that, though I swear I feel like I'm having to relearn all of that again as my almost 50 body is changing yet again. So I'm still kind of I'm back and then I'm not, and then I'm back and then I'm not. And this just seems to be my journey with that. But I also love learning about the science of how to, what I call fuel well to feel well, and the connections that are made with the types of foods that we can eat for really for us to feel our best, not necessarily about managing the shape of my body, but what's going to make me feel well, what's going to make me sleep well. Intuitive eating helps us rely on our own signals, and it takes away guilt and shame of food and body expectations. So I don't think I'm fully indoctrinated into intuitive eating. I kind of wish I was more so. Though I will say that I think that this type of eating makes sense. So this is one of those episodes that I haven't just picked up and ran with, and it's a full-on change, but it's walking with me. And I think it's worth mentioning a change that I'm in the process of implementing and just process of walking through. So that's that. Okay, here's another area that encompasses several episodes that I have really been working on and changing, and that is surrounding gut health. Now, if you pay attention to any headlines, you have probably noticed so many articles and informations surrounding the gut microbiome. functional medicine physician, Dr. Richard Harris, who is an MD, PharmD, and MBA. I told you these guests had a lot more letters behind my name. He provided just a wealth of information about how to create a healthy microbiome system in the episode called How to Have a Healthy Gut and Why It's Important. And remember, I'm going to link to all of these in the show notes. So his two biggest tips on increasing gut health were to, number one, meditate, and number two, to fast. I'll talk about meditating here in a little bit. And fasting is something that I've practiced for a while. Right now, I'm kind of back and forth on it because it just doesn't always feel right for my body. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. But I do honor and respect the science that he was providing about how that can help our gut health. He mentioned foods to help our gut, including kombucha, which I have started drinking. And I have to admit, I was a little skeptical because I'm like, everybody's drinking kombucha. I mean, like, this just seems like a super fad thing. But I will tell you that if my bathroom time is indicative of my gut health, let's just say kombucha seems to be helping. I'll leave it at that. Then when Hallie Brooke joined the show back in June of 2022, she came and the show's title was The Underlying Reasons You Are Chronically Exhausted. She provided several of just applicable tips on repairing our gut health. Spoiler alert, the underlying reason for chronic exhaustion is often poor gut microbiome. So we talked about ways to do this, including foods and supplements. She gave very specific things. It was really, really helpful. And ironically, one of the biggest takeaways for me from that conversation was the importance of making sure my supplements are actually what the bottle says it is. So to do that, I now make sure that all of my supplements I take, or most of them that I take and that I provide my family, are third-party tested to ensure accuracy. Because one of the things that Hallie was teaching us is how wide the range of error, the margin of error is on some of these. So I really do try to make sure that those supplements are third-party tested. Hallie provided a host of other resources. So if you are trying to heal your gut, I definitely recommend you listening to her as well as the episode with Dr. Harris. Now, in the same vein as gut health, Dr. Harris and I discussed the importance of having a variety of plants over the course of the week, because that will help encourage a healthy gut microbiome. By the way, I promise I'm going to get off gut health here in a second, but that's just kind of been an overarching conversation that we've had on several of our episodes. Now, I don't get too stringent on this, and quite frankly, it can become very obsessive for me if I'm not careful. But I am aware of what I'm eating, and I try to mix up the plants I consume. It's interesting and, dare I say, fun to see what kind of plants I can get in over the course of a week. When I write them down, what happens is the paper often looks like an inverted stair step, because I'll eat a decent amount of plants, which the plants, by the way, are like vegetables, fruits, nuts, seeds, grains. It's not just vegetables, okay? It's just anything that came from a plant. But I'll eat a decent amount, but I eat the same amount. So the stair step is like the first day I'll get a ton in. And then the next day I will often like re-eat a meal from the previous day, because who has time to cook new meals? And so the list of new or additional plants goes down, and then it goes down, and then it goes down. So it kind of looks like this inverted stair step over the course of the week. And in fact, by the way, if you're listening to this episode in real time, we will have a plant challenge in November over on the free Graced Health community Facebook group, where we track the plants that we have in a week. And it's just kind of fun to see what people are consuming and how many they're eating and all of that kind of stuff. And it's just it's just an awareness thing, right? It's not obsessive. It's not, idolizing it. It's just, hey, let's see what kind of plants we can consume. So head over there, join that group. It's all free if you would like to join us in November. Now, in a different area, let's talk some about what I have learned about our pelvic floor health. Yes, we do have those conversations for women by women over on the Graced Health podcast. So I spoke with Jen Lormond and Christina Walsh, who have I call them the Tighten Your Tinkler girls. So they have a signature program called Tighten Your Tinkler, and that is to restore and repair your pelvic floor health, so which they call your tinkler. Well, anyway, you know what I mean. I think you know what I mean. If you're a girl, you know what I mean. So I brought them on because they taught us about the connection between your lower back pain and your pelvic floor health. And I thought, well, this is interesting because I have lower back pain, but guess what? I also have leaks when I sneeze and when I cough or laugh, and again, that lower back pain. And so I thought, you know what? I'm just going to give this a shot. I'm going to do this program. I definitely saw an improvement when I was consistent with it. So it's just like strength training, right? We can do all the bicep curls we want and get amazing biceps if you want, which, by the way, I think are not a super functional movement, but who doesn't like to have nice biceps? Anyway, but then when you stop, your biceps are going to go away. So it's just like any other strength training function and intention. You have to keep doing it. And so even though I know better, I quit doing it. And then a lot of my issues came back. So I have been pulling this up and starting to redo it again. But since I have done that program, I have recommended it anytime a friend complains of the same kind of challenges I have, or if they might have other ones that, aren't listed here, but they're definitely related to pelvic floor health. And so basically, if I've recommended it to any friend who complains about that, I'm kind of recommending it to everyone because this is just an issue. You are not alone. You are not alone. And even though it's common, it's not normal to pee when you're doing jumping jacks. This is something that I've actually had to learn. I've had to learn the hard way. So I now do the daily warm up that comes with that signature program for about it takes me like 8 or 9 minutes. I do it most days, not all days. And then I also sleep with a pillow in between my knees, which I don't think we talked about on the podcast, but I did learn within the program. So that's just a little freebie pro tip for you. But if you are dealing with leaks of any kind, I highly recommend their program, which I will again link in the show notes. Okay, let's talk about my eyes. So as with everything else, my eyes are feeling the effects of age. And in fact, just today I went out to lunch with a friend and I went, I forgot my readers because it's so hard for me to read the menu. I've never worn glasses. I don't have prescriptions, but man alive, it's getting hard to read some things. And sometimes I'll give my son like a vitamin bottle. I'm like, how many capsules am I supposed to take here? Because I cannot read it. The writing is so slow or so small. So I had Dr. Kevin G on the show, who's an optometrist, and the episode was called, Does Your Reduced Vision Have COVID Syndrome? And a couple months after that, I thought, you know what? I've just got some eye issues going on, and I probably could use just a regular exam, if for nothing else, because they can look in and they can see inflammation, and they can also see blood pressure issues. It's the only place where you can actually look in and see your blood vessels. So I thought, I'm just going to go do this. Well, what I learned, and I also wanted to talk to them about my watery eyes. So I have just leaky eyes in the morning. And so they did an exam. They said, yes, you need some help with your vision. And anyway, my watery eyes, he said, one of the things that can really help is this eye compress. And actually, he talked about this on the show. And then I remembered, oh yeah, my son has this eye compress and he never uses it anymore. So I'm going to take it and I'm going to use it. So I washed it all up and I will use that a few mornings a week. It's just, you just put it on your eyes. It looks like a sleep mask. You heat it up in the microwave for like 20 seconds. And then I just wear it for like 6 to 8 minutes, something like that. So that has been, again, just one of these small changes. And I will do that during my morning quiet time while I'm praying. That's a really great time to do that. Let's talk about sleep. So we had a really recent episode with Morgan Adams, who's a holistic sleep coach, called Simple Ways to Increase Your Sleep Quality and Quantity. Okay, she provided a ton of information. One of I think it was actually the one simple thing that she recommended that I have been implementing, and I have had friends reaching out saying they are doing as well, and it's really helping them, is incorporating light therapy into their day. What is light therapy? Well, in essence, the very easiest thing is to get outside within the first hour or two of being awake for 10 to 15 minutes in the morning. The key is without sunglasses, which I went everywhere with sunglasses. I always wore my sunglasses. So I've really been kind of training my eyes to take them off. I'll wear a hat or a visor if the sun is kind of up, just so it's not straight into my eyes, which is why on Instagram or anywhere else, you'll see me with the visor that says full of grace, because that's why I'm doing that. I'm trying to protect my eyes a little bit, but also let that natural light in. Now, I will admit it is getting harder to do that as these days are getting shorter. Episode is dropping in October. And I know that between like now and November, for many of us, the days it gets light a lot later. So that is something that you have to do. So I'm not always able to get out within that first hour or two because I'm up at 5 or 5:30, but I'll still get out as when the sun comes up and just get that 10 or 15 minutes in. Maybe I'll go for a walk, or I have my first client starts at 7:30. So I'll try and get out like at 7:15, get out there for just 10 minutes after I'm kind of ready for the day and just get a little bit of sunlight in. And then when it's possible and when I'm ready to brave the heat, because here in Texas, in late September, it's still really hot. But I will just take my dog out for like a quick 5 or 10 minute walk. And she just loves it because I'm not hustling her along. And I like to get the fresh air, even though it's really muggy and hot, but still light therapy. The goal is light therapy. The goal is not to feel nice and crisp and clean. Another recent episode that prompted me to make a change was the one on magnesium with Natalie Gerardo, entitled Muscle Cramps, Fatigue, and Headaches. This natural mineral may help. Natalie is the founder of Rooted In, and she really helps us understand what magnesium does and the different types of magnesium, because they all have a little bit different of a function. Based on our conversation, I changed my magnesium supplement from a magnesium citrate powder to a magnesium malate capsule. And I will link the one that I have been using, that, by the way, is third-party tested, thanks to Hallie Brooke, in the show notes. One thing that she also mentioned, actually after our conversation, and then I added it on because I thought it was really important that is magnesium citrate can increase histamines. I have a lot of allergies, and the last thing I need is more histamines. Trust me, and my husband will confirm this too. Changing the supplement really has surprisingly helped my allergies. I've also added her amazing line of topical magnesium-infused lotions, and I highly, highly recommend them. My favorite is Relief because I deal with these twitchy muscles when I don't have enough magnesium, but the Rest, it's called Rest, and they also have another one called Tranquility. Those are fantastic too. So sometimes I'll double up and I'll put Tranquility on my chest if I'm feeling a little amped up or anxious before I go to bed. And then I put Relief on my quads. So check those out. But that's one big change that I have made since interviewing Natalie. And of course, she was several months ago, and then the episode just aired, but I have been implementing that since I interviewed her. Okay, another thing is I now not only work out for my own workouts barefoot most of the time. So these are workouts that are either in my gym, they're strength training, they are my Be Complete, which I'll talk in a minute, or any kind of mind body. I will also do my higher intensity workouts that are in my gym or in the room where I work out. I'll do these all barefoot. Elizabeth Kristoff came on the show, and Elizabeth is with Brain Based Wellness. And I'm going to talk about this episode a little bit more here in the future, or in a little bit, but she just really taught us the importance of exercising and walking barefoot and the connection that our foot receives to communicate back up to the body. So not only do I do this, I also encourage my clients to do the same thing during our time together. And even when I do like my online clients, I'm like, hey, if you feel safe, take off your shoes. So anytime we're just taking our shoes off, I am not afraid of shoes, but and because I'm like, whatever, I'm not a germaphobe, but I take those shoes off to really get my entire body connected to the movement that I am doing. Finally, I, at age 45 or 6 or something, finally learned how to put on makeup. Yes, that's right. Every now and then, when there are 5 Tuesdays in a month, I will try to have just something a little different, something a little fun. And I invited makeup artist Stephanie Leonard on the show, and she taught us about how to have a makeup free look after 40. So a few months ago, a friend of mine said, do you just find yourself wearing less and less makeup as you get older? And I said, no, because I feel like I need more and more to make it look like I'm not wearing makeup. So I don't really understand that, but that's just how it is. So I still don't wear a ton of makeup, but I have found the right way to apply and wear makeup for my aging skin. So she was really helpful in that, especially in dealing with my bags, and in dealing with, and she also taught the importance of contouring. So contouring those cheekbones, I think she called it like a push-up bra for your cheeks. So that was a really fun and helpful episode. Let's get into the mental aspect. So like I said, we have grace-filled conversations about physical, mental, and spiritual health. So from a mental health perspective, let's talk some about meditation. So many years ago, if you had asked me if I meditated, I probably would have been like, scrunched up my face and thought, that kind of sounds a little woo-woo to me. But now I am learning this practice can significantly help our stress level, our physical health, and the ability to regulate our nervous system. So just taking everything out of that fight or flight, taking us out of just that stressful mode. Now, I wish I could tell you that I meditate for a long period of time every day. I don't. I actually set my timer for about 3 minutes, and I'll meditate in the morning. And sometimes what I'll do is I'll bundle it up. So I'll wear my little eye compress while I'm meditating. 2 for 1 pro tip. You are very welcome. So I have spoken with Dr. Richard Harris of the Gut Health. Yes, he also recommended the meditation, like I mentioned. And then I also brought in Dr. Michelle Bankson, who is a neuropsychologist. Now, both of these amazing doctors are Jesus followers. And so if you feel like meditation is just a little too new agey and a little like, I don't know, I highly recommend specifically listening to the one that Dr. Michelle was on meditation. And then really from an overarching perspective, I think, through the various conversations that I have had over the last 3 years, the biggest transition I have made in my beliefs is I now believe we cannot separate the head from the rest of the body, which I used to do. And I talked at length about this in the episode on Be Complete when talking about pause, because Be Complete is an acronym for kind of all the things that we need to be doing: balance, core, mini muscles, pause, lengthening, and transverse exercise. So that episode on pause, I went into that a lot more, and you can go listen to that. But Be Complete is just this online on-demand class that helps you age strong. But anyway, P stands for pause, or just kind of taking a minute before we exercise to tune into our mental and our emotional state, because sometimes we're leaving work and we're racing and we've got traffic and we're dropping the kids off and then we're going to the gym and then we're just taking a minute to breathe, recognize where we're coming from, will help take our body out of that fight or flight and help keep us from getting injured. Because that's my main goal for all of us is to not be injured. Our mental and emotional state really just manifests throughout the body. So, like I mentioned above, with the episode with Elizabeth Kristoff, a tight hamstring is not necessarily just a tight hamstring. There's probably something associated with relation to stress or your emotions. Our connective tissue or our fascia is not something that just binds up in the form of plantar fasciitis in our heel. It is a superconductor highway that transmits emotions, sensations, everything else. This is the episode that Sue Hitzman joined us on just a couple episodes ago. So you can go learn about that. I am just so fascinated and so enjoy learning about this amazing intricate body that God has created in all of us, and just how connected everything is. Nothing is siloed. Nothing just exists on its own. And God just created us all to for every bit of our body to work together. So moving on, I have had a lot of, this is kind of under mental health, but it's also about parenting. So I've had a lot of episodes on parenting, and specifically parenting teenagers, because I have teenagers and a lot of women my age have teenagers. So if you would like a list of them, you can get a free download. Again, link in the show notes. One of my guests was licensed clinical social worker, Alyssa Costello, based in Connecticut. And she brought so many applicable tools, resources, and provided just wonderful direction for parents who are getting ready to send their child off into the next chapter. So let me tell you what I learned from her. The night before my oldest son left for college, we were all at the dinner table, and I said, okay, let's have some talks about what I can expect about how often we hear from you, because I would love to hear from you every day, but I recognize that you're going off and you're starting this new life and, like kind of semi-adulting, and you may not want to contact me every day. So I never would have thought about talking with him about this if Alyssa Costello hadn't suggested it. But we had in this episode called How to Prepare Your Child's Mental Health as they launch into the next season, one thing she suggested was the 3-2-1 method. The 3-2-1 method, which is 3 texts, 2 phone calls, and 1 FaceTime on a weekly basis. Now, we don't always get a FaceTime in. We don't always, I will say he'll talk to me once and he'll talk to his dad once. And even though my husband and I are obviously in the same home, I think it works better for him to have those individual conversations, and that works just fine for me. But you know what? We're pretty good at texting most days, so I'll just call it all a wash. But I think having that conversation about expectation setting, particularly for me, was really, really helpful. And I never would have thought about doing that had Alyssa not been on the show. We talked about physical. We talked about mental health. Let's talk about spiritual health. I have had the pleasure of knowing Yvette Walker with the Positively Joy podcast for several years, and it was a true delight to sit down and chat with her about the episode called What to Do When You're Sleepwalking Through Life. If I'm honest, I definitely go through seasons of this myself, and it was really nice to hear her story. While it's not like some super incredible story, it's very relatable. Yet the joy that she brings and offers truly is contagious. I had several listeners reach out to me privately and just say how much this episode impacted them. And obviously it impacted me as well. One of my takeaways from this episode was just the power of community and how that helped Yvette kind of step out of that sleepwalking and really getting back into community. We were not meant to do life alone. I have a tendency to hole up, to put my head down and not prioritize getting together with people. And this is something that I am working on. So if you have, or if you are or have been in a kind of a dormant season of your faith, I definitely recommend checking out this episode. I also had model Christine Handy on the show, and we talked about her experience with breast cancer and how that impacted her faith. So she had breast cancer after she had a whole host of other physical issues. And I really wish that I had read the book before I talked with her, because after I read the book, I was like, oh, I have more questions. But she just really came through a lot physically. And the whole episode in her book really was a stark reminder of sometimes the only thing we have to lean on is God. Like sometimes that is it. And this episode also got me thinking in so many ways about how I care for my friends and where my priorities lie. So kind of like what we were talking about earlier about community. Christine was really uplifted and carried by her friends during her seasons of physical issues and of breast cancer. And it was just such a great reminder to love and to care for your friends when they are, having challenges. Her words of never enough to God is enough. And the transition she made just still really resonates me. And the other thing too is it has influenced my buying decisions, because I'm not buying Gucci bags, but I really love Athleta, and I really love finding clothes in my colors. There are certain things that I do love buying, and her conversation just really challenged me to step back, think about like, what am I trying to get here? Is this really going to create happiness and joy? And the answer is probably yes. Short-term happiness, long-term joy, nah, not really. There are also a few episodes. So that was physical health, mental health, spiritual health. Then there are a few episodes that I just find myself in just organically in conversations referring to over and over again. So I want to mention those really quickly. One of them was called What Kind of Rest Do You Need, with Dr. Sandra Dalton Smith. In our hustle environment, of which I am extremely guilty, I tend to think of rest as closing my eyes and either shutting out the world for a few minutes or sleeping. Maybe I would qualify like laying down and reading a book as resting, which I hardly ever do until nighttime. And then I read for like 3 minutes and I'm falling asleep. But Dr. Sandra Dalton Smith's book, Sacred Rest, helped me see rest as a variety of ways to fill my uniquely created soul. She offers 7 different kinds of rest, which we talk about in the episode. And this podcast with her is just a great starting off point to her book. And anytime I speak with someone they're like, I'm so tired, I can't figure it out, I'm so tired, I recommend this episode and the book to just kind of investigate. Maybe you're not getting the kind of rest you need. Another episode I talk about a lot, and when I speak, I reference the book, is Rewrite Your Food Story to Change the Way You Think, Eat, and Live, with Elyse Musillis. So most days I sit down to eat my lunch and I pull up Apple News and I just scroll through, and that's just kind of my rhythm for eating lunch. One day I happened upon an article written by Elyse Musillis about the food noise we have in our brain with regard to our relationship with food. So you probably instantly went to something that you're talking about, like the thing, oh, I should, or I shouldn't, or this is good, or this is bad, or I'm going to have to do this, or I need to, like all of this nonsense going on in our head. And I love, love, love Elisa's term, food noise. She also calls this food story. So like this is the whole relationship, the whole story we have with regard to our relationship with food. So her book is also called Food Story. It is so profound. I just highlighted and underlined so much of it. And as a bonus, it includes some really delicious plant-heavy recipes. One big takeaway in my conversation with Elyse is to check my stress level before I eat, because if I'm wound up, my body is not going to absorb the nutrients that are in front of me. So I will take 3 calming breaths, inhaling through my belly, because that can be helpful with calming yourself down, and exhaling. And I'll do this before eating. And then I also noticed one day, I was like, oh, this is what happens when we sit down to dinner and we pray. It takes about 3 or 4 breaths. And this is just a great way to give thanks and bring down that stress level at the same time. Another episode I talk about a lot, especially when I'm talking with women and moms when I'm speaking, is the episode called Raising Daughters with a Healthy Body Image with licensed counselor Christina Kismar. This episode aired right when COVID was hitting. So I think it just kind of got forgotten, or not noticed is a better way of saying it, because we were kind of noticing other things like the pandemic around us. But this is an episode I talk about a lot. The most impactful thing that Christina taught us was our daughters will listen to what we say about ourselves and about others way more than they will listen to what we say about them. So we can praise them all we want. Oh, honey, you're beautiful. You look amazing. But if we're turning around and in the same breath or sentence or day saying, oh, I need to lose 10 pounds, that's what they're hearing. They're not hearing what we're saying about them. They're hearing what we're saying about ourselves. So I think that that's a really powerful reminder to watch the words that are coming out of our mouth. And obviously this impacts our sons as well. I have 2 boys, and I remember a couple years ago, I was kind of doing the same thing. And I was like, oh man, I'm kind of just not feeling great. And my son said, oh, come on, mom, you're better than that. So he called me out. Yeah, that feels good. Okay, another episode that I talk about a lot in one specific situation is what 4 generations can teach us about grief and unexpected loss. So this is actually with a friend of mine from high school named Heidi Pollock, and she took us right back to the time when her cousin Jamie died by suicide. Heidi and I were on a dance team together when this happened. And so I could really take myself back right to that year, right to that time together. And we really, we talked a lot about this traumatic season and the time that went on and how she and her family members processed that. We used to say Heidi and Jamie were double cousins, as their moms were sisters and their dad were brothers. So they were super tight, grew up really tight on within their family community. And this was just so incredibly painful to Heidi, and then obviously to Jamie's mom and family. So Heidi had the foresight to interview most of their family members. She interviewed their great grandparents before they passed, their grandparents, their parents, and then Jamie's siblings. Heidi was an only child, so she didn't interview any of her siblings, but Jamie's has 2 siblings. And that turned in to be the bones of her book called Abiding Light. So we talked a lot about just her experience in watching someone she loved or going through having someone she loved die by suicide. I have had some friends since then lose someone to suicide, and I've purchased this book for them to read, for them to read when the time is right. So this is a really specific and unique episode, but it's definitely one I recommend if you have been impacted by that. Another episode, I've got 2 more, I think. 2 more. Another episode that I go back and refer people to all the time is the one about story work with Emily Baker. So Emily is another childhood friend of mine. And in fact, we have been friends since we were 6 years old. She has walked with me and helped me understand that the stories from our past impact our future. I have come to realize we cannot just leave the past in the past without it leaving a mark on us in a way that will probably come back to haunt us later if we don't deal with those past traumatic stories. And those can be the big T or the small T. But, like she said, if you've been through middle school, you've had trauma. So this episode specifically focuses on these issues and why having a story focused, like a coaching counselor, can help propel our current and our future relationships with ourselves and with others. And then finally, I've talked about this several times already in just this episode, so you can only imagine how many times I talk about this in just conversations, but the episode called Why Our Tight Hamstrings May Be a Function of Your Nervous System with brain-based wellness founder Elizabeth Kristoff. So Elizabeth is an applied neuroscience practitioner. And one of the aspects of this episode that I love so much is it scientifically proves the integration of our mental health, our emotions, and the rest of our body. Elizabeth is also, she's come up through group fitness. So she did a lot of group fitness. She understands like the fitness mentality, and she integrates both of these into her conversation and then over at her program at Brain Based Wellness. But Elizabeth has a lot of really fascinating things to say on that episode, and I highly, highly recommend it if this kind of thing is interesting to you. So those are all of the things that I have learned, changes I have made. Again, they're not huge. They really aren't huge, but I really feel like they have impacted and enhanced my life in so many ways. The other two things that I can't leave without recognize are two milestones that I have hit over the last few years, which is number one, the release of my book called Your Worthy Body. Find freedom and health by breaking all the rules. And that takes all of these health and fitness rules related to our fitness, our nutrition, our body, and our body image. And it breaks them using exercise science and nutrition science. And it's all done through a lens of faith. And then I also launched my on-demand online class called Be Complete, which I'm so proud of. By the way, we do it barefoot, and yes, we integrate the pause into our into that class. So you can learn more about both of those in the show notes. And I just want to just take a minute and thank you. Thank you for listening to these. I know that there are so many podcasts out there, and I'm really truly honored that you have that you spend your time every now and then with me. I don't think that you probably listen to every single episode, and that is okay. But my hope is that you walk away from every episode feeling a little more ease and also empowered and educated, because I love learning the sciencey geeky stuff, and I also love Jesus. And so some of those episodes all work together. Some of them are a little more focused on one than the other, but I just want to thank you for listening. If you feel value from the show, the one thing that I would love for you to ask of you is to leave a review. So if you can leave, I will have a link on the show notes that makes it super simple. But if you could leave a rating and then specifically a review where you actually writing words, that is so helpful to the show. And that will just let other people know that like, yeah, this is valuable. This is worth your time. So if you don't mind doing that, I would really appreciate it. Again, go check out the show notes. I have links to all of this on here. I knew I threw a lot at you, and that way you can go through, figure out what you want to hear, and go listen to them, and just maybe you'll learn something different. I would love to know if you do. Okay, that is all for today. Go out there and have a great day.